Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
All right, here we are, episode 101. So this is our first post-episode 100 episode.
It's not quite a Post Malone.
No.
Post.
And it's not a Carl Malone.
No.
No, not a Carl Malone.
Yeah, joke.
No Post Malone, no Carl Malone. So if you're looking for the Post Malone / Carl Malone podcast, this is not the right place. But stick around. You might still really like this one.
Yeah,
So.
I think you will. I'm so excited about this one. I know I say that about everyone, but I really love the idea of this month of what we're doing. And this is one of my top 10 movies of all time. So.
Yeah. So what are we doing this month, Val?
So we are headed into spring, and spring means change and renewal and all of the sunshine and happiness. So we figured we would do the same with movies. What movies kind of have some change and make you feel really, really happy? And the first one we're going to do is Chef, because if you've ever seen the movie Chef, he definitely has kind of a big change about himself in this movie that he has to make pretty drastically. And watching this movie not only makes me super happy, but super hungry. So if you haven't seen it yet, make sure that you have some snacks handy or that you watch it in the kitchen so that you can.
Or do what I do and eat before, because then you can enjoy it more and you don't feel guilty about what you're snacking or eating because you're not eating what's on the screen.
Oh, see, I've seen it enough. Now I make like my chef meals.
Oh,
and I just have it. And as they're eating, I'm like, except for when I watched it last night in bed, I did the pre-eating and I was relaxed. But I discovered this movie, I think I want to say maybe 4 years ago. And I think we're all big Jon Favreau fans.
Mm-hmm.
And Jon Favreau is an actor, director, producer, writer, and this movie, he not only directs it and helps write it, but he also stars in it, which is really great. And it's, I think, a different side of him than we've seen. It's not him as happy. It's, it's not him in Swingers, if you've seen Swingers. But I just really love this movie because his character really does go through a transformation. He plays a chef. And he's the ex-husband of
Sofia Varga.
Sofia Varga, which to me is, I just want to see the prequel where they actually start dating and she thinks this is a good idea. Like her character in itself is really fun in this movie. She's fun. And I think you can tell that he cast a lot of people that he really loves.
Yes.
Because they're all having a really good time making this film. You have Sofia Varga, you have John Leguizamo, who I love.
Yes.
Out of the park.
And then the other guy in the kitchen, who is now in a new movie that is on Netflix. And he plays a bad guy in a whole bunch of movies, but what's his name?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I'm going to look it up.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, thank you for pulling it up.
Well, then you've also got Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, spoiler alert, there are some Avengers in this movie, which is really fun because he's also kind of dating Scarlett Johansson's character in this movie, and Sofia Vergara's other ex-husband is Robert Downey Jr., and so it's this like weird like love triangle thing, which is really fun.
Well, and the guy you're thinking of, Bobby Cannavale,
yes,
who plays Tony and is in Ant-Man. He is
in Ant-Man as the bad guy.
Well, he's not the bad guy.
In the first one, he is, because he's the new husband.
Well, yeah, but he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy, and especially in the second one, he's much more.
Was a bad guy.
He is, but like the first one, he's kind of like.
She said he was a bad guy, not a villain.
Yeah,
but he wasn't a bad guy either. He wasn't a villain or a bad guy. He was He was a
He was
cop.
an innocent bystander who is kind
Listen,
of
he's the
who makes
stepdad
bad
trying to.
choices. He makes bad choices in the first one. He's fine. He's fine. But there.
Yeah, but this is kind of like the Avengers do a cooking show, is what Chef is. When you look at the cast,
And we know Vision loves to cook, so that would work.
yeah.
So I wanted to say he's in a movie called Thunder Force.
Oh yes, the new one that just came out.
On Netflix, which I gave that movie a B-.
Yeah.
And he's a bad guy in that movie. And I would say he does really great, and Octavia Spencer does really great. And I wanted to like Melissa McCarthy more. But I kind of feel like I got from her everything that I usually get from her.
Mhm.
There were some really funny moments, but it was also just like a lot of too much slapstick for me. But I was nice to see kind of a mockumentary of a superhero movie, because everybody's been taking superheroes so serious lately with like the Snyder Cut and like all these things, that it was nice to just like take something and just have fun with it. But there were a lot of things I was just kind of like, okay. And then there were a lot of things where I was like, that was really funny. So my grade for that was a B-.
Yeah, the cast in this is really good though, and Chef, I really appreciated John Leguizamo is really, really good as Marty in this, like really good. And I'm not typically a huge John Leguizamo fan, but in this, it's just the right amount of him in the film, and I think he does a great job.
Well, and I love the guy who plays the critic. What's his name? He is
my gosh, Oliver Platt, I think.
Oliver Platt is so much fun. I love him in everything he's ever been in.
One of my favorite actors,
to me, like I've had a little crush on him since he was in The Three Musketeers. And I just think he is funny and sexy. And then he's in this movie as this food critic, and him and like his relationship with Jon Favreau's character is so much fun to me. And the meltdown that Jon Favreau has is every once in a while and I got Dave hooked to this movie as well. Every once in a while when something kind of goes wrong, I just either him or I will like kind of yell out loud, "It was molten! The cake was effing molten!" Like he just has this breakdown. But what I love, there are so many things about what I love. So the kid who plays his son is so great in this movie. Yes. And I love that he's trying to be this chef, which is a really hard job to have. If you didn't know, chefs like don't really have lives. Like if you're a chef or a manager of a restaurant, that's pretty much it for you. That's your life. And his son just really wants to be a part of his life. And because he's a chef, he really doesn't know a whole lot about the outside world. And when this movie was filmed, like social media had been around for a little bit, but unless you were like really plugged in, you could totally not know what Twitter is, right? So it's really
still
funny.
Don't use Twitter.
A lot of people still don't know what
Tracy.
Twitter is. But I love it when him and his son are kind of having this bonding moment, and his son is explaining to him what Twitter is, and he's setting up his dad's account and kind of explaining it. And his dad looks at him like we all look at our kids when we realize they're smarter than me. This is like, look at them explain to me how something important works. And I just love that look that he gives to his son, because like, you know, most of us have given a kid a look like that at some point, whether it's your kid or a niece or a nephew or somebody you've been mentoring, when you realize that now they're smarter than you. They know something. And so it's just kind of this cool moment. And he doesn't absorb any of it. He doesn't remember anything of what his kid tells him about Twitter, and he just F's it up.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I love that too, that conversation where he's like, "What do you want your username to be?" He's like, Carl. And he's like, "No, Dad, you can't
be Carl.
It's gotta be at something." All right, Carl Casper. Nope, it's taken. Somebody's taken my name. Dad.
You don't understand.
You don't know how this works.
When you reply to everyone. Everyone has seen what you said. No, I
replied and it was private message.
No, it was
you
not.
just flipped that guy off into the whole Twitterverse. But I thought that was great.
I want to talk real quick about Oliver Platt, go back to that a little bit, because I do think he's great in this movie. He doesn't have a ton of lines.
No.
But what makes him such a great actor and why I enjoy a lot of his work is his facial expressions just kill me. As he
doesn't need to say anything.
Right. When he comes into the restaurant and they're bringing him the exact same menu as he just trashed the time before, and the looks that he's giving as they bring out the egg, like, are you serious? Like, okay, someone's having a go at me. Like, you could tell just from his facial expressions, and I think he's so great in that way. So I really appreciated his performance as well. And I love at the end where they get together and he starts talking to him and he's like, I thought you were doing that just to like get publicity for the restaurant. I thought it was all a stunt. I was playing along. Yeah. And he was like, no, I had no idea what I was doing. Well, obviously. Yeah, it was great.
Well, and you have Dustin Hoffman. So Dustin Hoffman plays the owner of the restaurant, and he has a very small role as well. And he's so frustrating because when, he basically makes it so that Carl cannot do a new menu when they know that this critic is coming in. So he's like, okay, so he does the regular old menu, and then the critic is like, that's boring. You've been doing the same menu for 10 years. I thought you were fun, but you're not fun. You're a fun sucker of food. And so then on Twitter, he's like, well, I'm going to make a whole new menu for you. And the restaurant gets filled up. So anyone in their right mind would be like, okay, you tweeted that you're going to do a new menu. This guy hated what you gave him yesterday. So obviously, logically, you should make something different. Dennis Hoffman comes in and he's like, you're doing the same menu, right? Why would anybody think that that's okay? It's so frustrating every time he argues with him on the fact that he needs to do his own menu. And all of a sudden, the kitchen is his after this agreement. Like, that to me, I was kind of like, okay, like I realize this has to happen for this movie to push forward, but I just want to smack Dennis Hoffman in the face. And I've never really wanted to do that. I wanted to take that menu and smack him with it.
Yeah. And I love it in their initial conversation too, because he compares the critic coming in to going to a concert for like the Rolling Stones, and like, how would you like to go to a Rolling Stones concert? And they don't play Satisfaction. And I just want to point out that he has it all wrong when it comes to food and the menu, and the chef should have done what he wants, but all right on a concert, because I hate when you go to see a band and they make you sit through all this new stuff that you don't care about at all, and they don't play their hits. Like, that's the worst. So
that's why first that was really logical at the first time when he's like, okay, I get what you're saying. I know I had all this planned, but that was logical. The second time when he comes back and he's like, this is filled with a whole bunch of people. Right. But I just told the whole world that I'm doing something new. They're all coming here for me to do something new.
I could see that from a business owner standpoint going, I've got a full restaurant. This is a tried and true menu. Most people like it. This critic didn't.
Then at least give the critic the different food, because he just said it was crap.
Yeah,
he just publicly said the food at this restaurant is crap.
And I think that there are different levels of restaurants, right? Like, if I go to Cheesecake Factory, I'm expecting that menu, as large as it is, to be basically the same every time I go in there. There are certain restaurants that you go to and you want it to be that comfort. Like, I know what I'm going to get. I've gotten it every time I come in here. But a restaurant like what he was running and trying to run, where you've got a premier chef, you should be able to change that up all the time. And I think that the foodie culture has evolved over time, and especially as social media has become what it is. And, maybe in 2014, it's still evolving at that point. But I think at this point in time right now, like, people expect that. Like, the foodie culture is, I'm going to go and I want to experience something new. And Dustin Hoffman is like just stifling his creativity. And obviously, like you said, Val, he needed that to move forward and to get into the food truck situation.
Yeah. So, and that leads me to like my next favorite part in the film is, so Dennis Hoffman says, all right, you either cook this menu.
You keep calling him Dennis, Val. It's Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin, I don't know why. Because he's acting like a Dennis, and I want to punch him in the face. I am so sorry, Dustin Hoffman fans. You can send hate mail to me this time. I am a Dustin Hoffman fan. I don't know why his name is now Dennis, because I usually love him. And in this movie, I hate him. So
that's right. You're deflecting.
I've deflected
It's gotta be
someone I
his
hate
twin,
named Dennis.
Dennis.
I don't know who this Dennis person is that I don't care for, but
the evil twin Dennis, yes.
So Dustin Hoffman's character says you either cook this food or you leave. So he leaves and he thinks that his whole kitchen is going to go with him. But if you know of anyone else that works in a kitchen, they're usually working their way up. They don't make a lot of money. They work really long hours. And he understood that. Like at the time, he was like, okay, nobody's following me. And then, of course, John Leguizamo, who's his best friend, tried to. And he's like, no, just stay. I'm going. And then he went home and he cooked the food he was going to cook. But he did not do what he should have done. And that was take pictures of every single bit of that. If I was his social media manager, I would have taken pictures of all of that food. I would have tweeted it and said, this is what I would have cooked tonight if my stupid butthead boss would have let me stay there and cook. And I would have, because that looked delicious. I wanted to eat all of that food.
All of that, yes.
But he doesn't.
I thought he was going to load up the car and take it back to the restaurant.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like he just cooked it for no one. And I'm thinking, who's going to eat all this food? Because what's this going to do with it? Like, but.
And I think that's just there to highlight like how much he doesn't know at that point to use social media and how to use social media. Because I agree. I thought the same thing. Like, so what is the point of him making this food? I guess just to get it out of his system or what?
Yeah. But like if he would have known, if it would have been like a year later, he obviously would have photographed all that food. And then he goes back to the restaurant and he has a nervous breakdown. And everyone else in the restaurant records everything that he's doing.
Brilliant scene.
And it was such a great scene. I don't know if that was like they just kind of gave him, okay, you're going to have this conflict now. Or if they totally scripted out that scene or he just kind of went with it. But I just love it when he picks up the molten cake on the plate and his
Well, then the best thing is he goes back and he grabs the molten cake off another table and brings it back and repeats it. It's not underdone.
Yeah.
You take the chocolate, you freeze it, you put it in the middle.
Yeah.
That scene was great.
It's a brilliant scene. And I love it because as you're watching it, you know that what he's doing, he's upset at this critic, not because of what the critic said. I mean, partially because of what the critic said.
He's
but
mad at himself.
Right. Yeah. He realizes the critic was right 100% spot on, and he wasn't happy in what he was doing.
Yeah.
But he doesn't realize that yet at this point in the film, and so he's still mad about the molten lava cake.
And then, of course, it just goes viral. He doesn't understand what viral even means, and he shows up and goes and talks to Sofia Vergara. I don't even really know what she does in the movie, but she's famous. She does things.
She's rich and she's beautiful.
She's rich. She's beautiful. She has a publicist.
So like what she does in real life.
Yeah. Then. So she really just is her in real life. And her publicist is that lady that you always love, but you never know her name. She's from Elf. Like she plays the receptionist in Elf. And she's just like, okay, so we can work with this. You can, we can suck money out of your nervous breakdown and get you on Hell's Kitchen and like all like he's like what? It's like what? Like
he's like, I don't think you understand. I'm a real chef and I want to be able to cook. Like that's what I want.
I could see a publicist saying that though. It's like either you lay low and bury this thing and stay hidden for a while and come back, or accept this and run with it and make some money off of it if you can.
Yeah. And then they go to Florida. They go to Miami, and this is so funny because that's where Robert Downey Jr. lives, her ex-husband. That's where her dad lives. They go to this club. They have like all this cool stuff. And he goes to Robert Downey Jr.'s office. And this booty thing, I don't know who thought of this. Like it's not relevant at all to the movie, but he shows up to this office and the floor is so slippery and the receptionist is like, booties? And he's like, what? So he puts booties on his shoes and he's just sliding like everywhere, all over the office. And I'm like, did this happen to someone? Did someone go to some office to have a meeting
It must
somewhere.
have.
And you know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
Mhm.
this is so peculiar of a thing to
Mhm.
add into a movie.
I just figured that's how Robert Downey Jr.'s office really is. He just
Right?
has, like, he makes you wear booties on his hard tiled floor. It's fine.
And then he makes you pick out the type of carpet because everybody keeps slipping. So he's
And
got to
all of
replace
that
the tile
carpet
with
was
carpet.
ugly. That was the ugliest carpet
It
I've
was
ever
really
seen.
bad carpet.
That was like the carpet that you see in an old roller skating rink.
Mhm.
That's
Oh,
not
yes.
that's not a
Yes.
carpet that you see in a like high-end, office space. It was disgusting carpet.
Well, and I love the interaction between him and I think his name's Marvin, the character's name in the film, and he starts out by asking him to pick out the carpet. He's like, let's make this easy. Let's start with something easy. Pick out the carpet. He's like, what carpet are you talking about? Yeah, because people keep slipping. It's like, well, you could just have them not wear booties. No, I can't do that. But they don't give an explanation as to why he can't do that. It's just, nope,
He just
that's
can't.
not an option.
No.
And even he's got booties on his shoes. Like when he puts his feet up on the desk, he's got his booties on. It's like
No,
the
I
most
can't.
bizarre thing.
I would rather put this really ugly carpet up. Also, I might be having an affair with my receptionist. She's pregnant. I'm snipped. I don't know what I'm going to do about this. And he's just like, what is going on?
He's like,
here?
well, yeah, he's like, well, the first issue with the carpet, I guess go with the brown one. And the second issue, that's just kind of personal. And I don't really know what to tell you.
And then he's had a relationship with his ex-wife.
Yeah.
Their ex-wife.
Yeah, with their combined ex-wife. Wait, ex-wife's ex-husband. Yeah, that was all.
Again, like love triangle situation. But the whole idea is that he went there to get this food truck that he for some reason has this food truck because he just has things. He's just kind of like Iron Man. He just has things and people working for him doing things.
And he's kept this rusty, dirty food truck in his parking lot for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he goes there, he gets the food truck, he has his son with him, and that leaves me to another kid adult situation that I just really love because they have to do this thing together and he's not used to kind of explaining how to do things. Because he's kind of been in his own work. He's used to working with sous chefs and a whole line of people that he can just give, yell at basically.
And before they start working on the truck, though, I just want to, because you mentioned this, Tracy, when Marvin mentions that he may have had relations with their combined ex-wife. I love that in the middle of getting this food truck and getting it up and going, the first thing he talks to her about is, so did you have relations with him after? And she was like,
she's
well, that's really
of course she's like, it's my ex-husband.
And then, yeah, that's right. Well, no, but I mean, after we were divorced, and it's this whole long, awkward conversation to get to her saying, no, we didn't actually go through with it. But it's just so funny because as a guy, you're like, yeah, that's probably the first thing that you would ask. Forget the truck, forget everything else.
Yeah.
Hey,
that doesn't matter. I need
especially
to know.
because they're both still in love with each other, obviously. And there's the father-son moment, which is really good. But my favorite moment in the movie is when John Leguizamo shows up. He calls John Leguizamo. He says, I got me a food truck. And he's like, you got a taco truck? And he's telling everybody in this high-end restaurant, you got a taco truck. And the minute he knew that that's what he was doing, as his best friend, he quit his job, he got on a plane, and he freaking showed up for his best friend. Yeah. Who has friends like that? I hope everyone has at least one friend that would just drop everything in their life and show up for you. That to me, and that's Dave noticed, and that's his favorite part of the movie too, is just he's like, look, you said that this is what you were doing. And he's like, so there was no question in my mind. This is what I'm doing. What are we doing? And he helps him clean out the truck. He takes, of course, he's got some relative in, Miami that can soup this truck up for him, and pimps his ride and shows up the next day with the best, coolest looking food truck ever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it's so crucial that he shows up too, because he becomes kind of a bridge for that relationship between the father and son. He's kind of that. Sometimes when you're in that awkward, you need that third person to kind of the glue to bring the relationship together. And I think his character does that for the father and son relationship, and I like that a lot. But and not just getting on a plane and going to Miami, but right after he gets a promotion to sous chef, he's like, yeah, forget it. I told you, whatever gig you got next, I'd be right there.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Food trucks don't need sous chefs.
It's like, all right, you're hired. It pays nothing.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, I love that scene where they're cleaning out the truck with the kid, because the kid just wants to spend time with his dad, and they're bonding, and then his dad becomes his boss, and he's like cleaning out that fridge, and the kid's like, nope, that stinks, and there's something in there, and I don't want to do it. So he just throws the whole pan away, and then Jon Favreau's character is like, no, go get it, go clean it, and the kid's like, no. I'm not working for you. And it was just such a nice dynamic. And then later, when he gets burned, he burns his finger, and Jon Favreau's like, you okay? Do you want to step out? And he's like, no, I'm good. And it's just little moments. And that kid was really, really effective.
Well, and when he accidentally burns the sandwich and they give it to the guys who were helping them, and it's free, like they're not charging him. And he's like, you're going to serve this? And he's like, we need a moment. And he's like, I know what you're going to, you need a moment. And he takes him out, and he's like, you don't ever give anyone, not your best. It doesn't matter if it's free, if they're paying, like you should always be giving your best is basically what I got out of it. It should be life lesson. The best food, but also just like, it doesn't matter, if, like for me, if I'm on the air in the morning and I'm getting paid for it, or if I'm working a charity like I am this afternoon, it doesn't matter if I'm there for free or if I'm getting paid. Like, you give 100% of what you do. And I know a lot of performers say that too. It doesn't matter if there's one person in the audience or there's 10,000 people in the audience. You play your show. You do the best show that you're going to do. And I just thought that was such a good life lesson for him. And I think he wanted it. Like, this kid really wanted life lessons from his dad. Yeah. He just wanted his dad.
Well, and that scene really resonated with me, because as you guys know, we'll often go out. We haven't because of COVID, but we'll go out and do homeless outreaches in Salt Lake City. And we used to make burritos. Now we're making grilled cheese. And when we get new volunteers, sometimes, the sandwich gets burned or the burrito doesn't get rolled properly. And they're like, well, it's just for a homeless person, so it's okay. And it's like, no, if you would need it, it's not going to them. And that, I was like, that's a great life lesson for that kid to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was also a great moment too for him, for the kid to start understanding that this wasn't just something his dad did or fell into. It was his passion and his love.
Yeah.
Like, I love the moment when he says to him, do you like doing this? And the kid says, yeah, I like doing this. He says, well, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the kid starts to connect and understand it. And then, I mean, obviously, for me, one of the best parts of this movie is from then on, when they're going on the cross-country trip together. And it's just, and it all starts with the conversation where he's given him, where John Leguizamo's character gives him the cerveza. And he's like, is this a beer? Because like, is this a beer?
No,
it's like, cerveza. I would never give you a beer. It's a cerveza. And
he's like, you're part of the crew now.
Your kitchen staff. Kitchen staff isn't an H. Your kitchen staff. And then he takes the sip. He's like,
tastes awful, right?
Yeah.
Remember that next time your friends offer you a beer.
Oh my gosh. When they're on the road and he's shooting all those little videos and stuff, and then they get to the beach, and that cop is so annoying. He's like, you've got to move. Wait, are you this guy? Can I get a picture here? Can I get a picture here? Can we do this? Can you get a picture of me holding the sandwich?
Can we Lady and Tramp it? That was my favorite. Can we do a Lady and the Tramp?
Yeah, come on. Just, you can do it.
But I gotta say, I have been to New Orleans, and it was so awesome in that scene, because I'm like, I've been to Café du Monde. I know what those beignets taste like. And yes, those beignets there are different than anywhere
I can't
else.
wait to go. It's on my list, man. Like, I can't wait.
All they do are make beignets and coffee and hot chocolate. That's it. And there's always a line. Like, it'll be 3:00 in the morning, and they're open 24 hours. There's a line out the door at 3:00 in the morning.
Wow.
For donuts and coffee, and it is so good. And I'm just like, oh, and so then as they're walking through the streets, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been to the French Quarter. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I loved that when he takes him to go get the beignets, because that calls back to their conversation about going to New Orleans. And when they say they're going to go on this trip and stop in different cities, you're like, they're going to stop in New Orleans.
And when he picks New Orleans over Disney World?
Yeah. I wouldn't do that.
Not at 10 years old. No.
But that just proves he just wanted to experience this with his dad. Like he was there. Right. He was in it.
Well, and earlier in the film, when they have that conversation about Twitter, and he says, I like doing this. I like hanging out and doing stuff like this. He's like, we hang out and do stuff all the time. Well, no, not like watching something but like just this, where we're talking and we're learning from each other. And that's obviously that's what he was yearning for. And he gets that in New Orleans when they're getting the beignets, and he's like, okay, well, don't we need to go get stuff for the truck? He's like, no, we're just getting beignets. So you just brought me over here just to get beignets? Yeah. And like, it meant so much to the kid that his dad was like, here, we're in New Orleans. The first thing we're doing is going and getting you your first beignet from Cafe du Monde.
That's what you have to do. That is a requirement now. When you go.
No, you don't have to tell me twice. I've been wanting to do this for years, so yeah.
But then I love it when they come back to the truck and there's just a line of people, and John Leguizamo's character like doesn't know what to do. He's like, dude, you got to check this out. Look, there's all these people. And he's like, oh, this is awesome. Thanks for getting all these people here. And he's like, I didn't do it. I have no idea why they're here. So I was like, oh, it's probably me because I've been tweeting where we're at and geotagging it. Like,
he's like, geotag? What?
What is that? He's like,
is that a Pokemon? What is that? I don't know.
You're the new chief of marketing. And it was just awesome.
Well, I love the scene too when they are sampling the barbecue. And he's like, I'm sorry, it's not store-bought. You won't like it. Because this kid's like, we could have gotten this at the store.
Yeah.
This isn't store-bought. You won't like it. And then they're like, just another little piece. And this is so funny because this is the food they're going to use to serve to people. But it's so good that they have to just like keep sampling it.
Well, and I love that because that shows the passion that he had for it, right? Mm-hmm. Like he was cooking the stuff at this point that he loves, that he thinks tastes good. And before, you think about these fancy hoity-toity restaurants and like they taste it not because they love it. They taste it because they want to make sure that the product is quality and it's what people are expecting from them. But when they're tasting it and sampling it that first time, and again, when they're with the barbecue guy in Texas,
I've been there.
Oh,
you've been to that restaurant in Texas?
I've never been to that
restaurant. It's almost always sold out.
Yeah.
Like you have to go early if you want to get anything because it's almost sold out every day.
And that's the real guy. Like that's the real barbecue guy. Yeah. That's not an actor or it's like his
these are all relationships that Jon Favreau made because now he has the show that goes with it, and it's the actual chef that taught him how to cook for the movie, and they do all this stuff. It was just really neat. Like this movie just in so many ways is so neat.
And then we've got a really cool cameo too at that same scene. You've got Gary Clark Jr., the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guitarist, who's singing and playing his guitar there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Gary Clark Jr. And Jake, here's a little tidbit that you'll enjoy. He played Crossroads at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction of Rush, where they had Rush, Foo Fighters, a guy from the Eagles. They had Heart, Gary Clark Jr., Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, Run DMC. That's a great version of Crossroads.
Nice.
Very cool.
So it was just really cool. I'm like, that's Gary Clark Jr.
Yeah. And I love that scene too, because he's sitting on top of the truck with his son as they're watching it. And it's almost heartbreaking because he's telling his son, like, look, we're going to go back to LA and things are going to go back basically to how they were. Like, you've got to go back to school. I'm going to be busy with the truck. Like, we're not going to be able to hang out like this. And I'm just like, come on, don't go back to like,
not right now. And not in this moment.
I've seen enough movies and I've read enough stories that I know that you're not going to build this whole story and development and everything else and then say, never mind, it all goes back to normal. But still, in that moment, I'm like, oh crap, he's just going to go back and do the exact same thing that he did before.
And then they show up in LA, and I have been to that food truck alley. So that's at a school, and I've been there. and tried almost every truck that was there. And I would have died if I would have showed up and he was there. But he shows up, and then you get the food critic again. And he comes, he had somebody else get a sandwich for him. And he shows up to the truck, and now everybody's working in the truck. His ex-wife's working in the truck, son's there, he's there, and she's like, "What do you want? Like, there's nothing here for you." Like, in her, and so he takes him off to the side, and he's like, "This is why I liked you. This is why you were one of my front runners. This is why, you were one of my favorites." And he, offers, like, "Do you want to have a restaurant together?" like, which, so
I'm basically going to fund it, but you get to run it and do whatever you want. You can decorate it, you can name it, all of that. Like, it was really, it was great to see that moment, that redemption where he's like, "Yeah, this is why I backed you in the beginning. This is why I thought you were great all those years ago." It was awesome. And the food must have been great. It looked delicious. The sandwiches, like, every time they made them.
One of those I just want one of those sandwiches. And I know I could go into my kitchen. I've got, like, the sandwich making thing. It would be super easy, though. But, like, I'm just lazy. And I just want him to make it for me.
Yeah. But it's like, sometimes, and that's the thing I love too, is he's like this uber fancy chef. Like, he's making Korean barbecue on the tasting menu, and he's doing filet, and he's doing all these things. And when he gets to the food truck, it's a Cubano sandwich, which is pork, ham, cheese, and pickles and mustard. And that's it. And it reminded me of when I went to Paris, and I would just get like a capicola salami cheese sandwich on the French baguette. And it was like the best sandwich I've ever had.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of thing. It's that simple. There's nowhere for those flavors to hide. It's got to all work together.
There's nothing simple about his grilled cheese. I did make a grilled cheese like that. And that's how I make grilled cheeses now, with, like, all the different cheeses, and, like, I do the thing. Oh my gosh. If you've never had a grilled cheese with, like, just go to Harmon's or Smith's or wherever you get your fancy cheeses and be like, "What's good today?" And have them give you a couple different cheeses. Take it home, make a grilled cheese with it. You will never... if you have the little, and I'm sorry, I'm going to shame some of you guys right now. If you are unwrapping your cheese from plastic, a single slice, and that's what you're using on your grilled cheese, stop it.
Yeah.
If you're not 7, stop doing that.
It's interesting because I love what you guys are talking about. Like, there's a certain simplicity to the sandwich that he makes, but he does it just the right way. And on the food cart or food truck, it looks amazing. It looks tasty. And it's just out of a food truck. But, like, simple doesn't mean that it's not good if it's done right.
Right.
Like, when we were on our recent trip, we ate at a fancy burger place. And it was fine. The burger was fine. But then later, we wanted a quick lunch, so we stopped by Shake Shack and got a burger from there. And the burger was so different, right? It was from a fast food place. I just got a simple, like, cheeseburger with the sauce on it. And it was amazing compared to the other burger. Half the price, at least, maybe a quarter of the price. But it was amazing because it was done right by people who know what they're doing. And that's the thing, is it can be simple.
Yeah.
And still be delicious and amazing. I think we overcomplicate things sometimes.
Yeah.
Back when I was working at the office at KUTV, every Thursday would have Food Truck Thursday, and they'd fill up Gallivan Plaza.
We would be
with
there
food
too.
Trucks. And that's some of the best food I've ever had. Like, there was a Cuban food truck that showed up one day, and I got a Cubano. And normally I don't like pickles or mustard, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it how they would build it. And that's the first time that I enjoyed pickles and mustard on a sandwich, because I'm like, okay, it cuts through the richness. This makes sense, But the simple food truck, I mean, there's some food trucks where it's just okay, but there's some food trucks that are putting out some amazing food.
So I want to do a shout out to Ty, because Ty Russell, who is my cohort over on Multiplane Podcast, he is like the perfect example of this. He has a food truck, and I'm trying to remember what the name is. I'm sorry, Ty. It's a New Zealand food truck. And anytime that Dave and I can drive out to to eat from there, it's amazing because he usually only has like 2 or 3 things that he's making. It's very specialty and it is freaking delicious. Like I think food trucks is such a good idea because you can't have like this big, huge restaurant. Most food trucks that are successful, they pick, you 3 things that they do really, really well that they specialize in at that moment for that day. And it is amazing. And I got to say that meat pie is so delicious. They have a Hawaiian burger that I have not tried yet that I regret not eating to this day. I should have ordered both the meat pie and the Hawaiian burger, but I was trying not to be a pig, but now I regret it. So now I've got to go back. But
yeah. So we'll have to, I've got to check out Ty's food truck. I've seen him advertise it. I need to go down there.
It's so good.
It's always hard because it's in Utah County, which is the county that I hate going to more than any other county in the country.
He lets me know when he's a little bit closer, so I always go when he's a little bit closer.
Like Lehigh.
Yeah.
The northern edges of Utah County.
Yeah.
But yeah, what people have been able to do with food trucks and what it has become is just crazy. Because really you would have thought, 10 years ago, a food truck, it's going to be really bad food. It's going to be really cheap
How
food.
do they keep things clean?
They're the cleanest most of the time because they have lots of regulations that regular restaurants don't have. And their food turns over quicker because they don't have anywhere to store it. Like they have to make it and sell it. They can't just keep it there. So, yeah, like you're right there. Like Jake, it's kind of, and I think in the movie, it's kind of like that too. Like, well, I can't go get a taco truck. I'm a real chef. Like I cook real food, but like and they used to have like, wasn't there a show that was like food truck face off or something
the
like
great
that?
Food truck race.
Yeah. The great food truck race. And there really is like, you have to be super talented to be able to turn food over in the amount of time that people expect on a food truck. They're not going to sit there and wait. They want you to like get the food out. Plus it has to taste good at the same time. And so I feel like that's a talent that not every chef can have, no matter how great you are at cooking.
Well, and what I loved in this movie that we saw that was similar to that show, because when they would do the show, they would always have a challenge based on where they were, where they had to take a local ingredient and incorporate it into their food truck. And I loved seeing them do that in this movie as well. When they would get to Texas, they got the brisket barbecue and added it as a slider. And as they added beignets when they were in New Orleans. And so they would find something that would draw in the local crowd. And I love that idea of like, hey, let's look at what's available and what's here and make something great with what's here. And I loved it when he's walking through the market with his son and he's explaining that. He's like, look, I look and I let the food that's here inspire me to make stuff. Here's some yucca stuff. I'm going to grab that. That's fresh. Here's some plantains that are fresh. Like we're going to base our menu on what's here and what's available and what's fresh. And I love that.
I do love at the beginning of the movie when he's walking through the market with them at first. He's like, no, because you're just going to ask me for everything. And we all know that. Like we've taken a kid somewhere and they're, if you take them to this place, they're going to be like, can I have that? Can I have that? And then he's like, hey, have you ever tried this kind of sausage and andouille sausage? And he's like, no. And he's like, yeah, it's really good. It's spicy. Well, I don't like spicy. Well, it's not spicy. You're going to love it. Like,
it's fine.
And then I think one of my favorite lines in the movie is when the kid asks for kettle corn. Do you know what kettle corn is? It's carbs covered in sugar. No, have a piece of fruit. Have this apple.
He's like, I don't want a fruit. And then they both end up eating a bag full of kettle corn.
Yeah. And that is parenting. That whole scene is parenting in a nutshell. Like you tell the kid, look, I'll take you to the store, but you just can't ask for everything. And then you take them to the store and they ask for every single thing they see. Like they have forgotten the whole conversation ever happened. You tell them, no, I'm not going to get you that. And then it ends up in the cart and you're buying it anyway. It happens to me every time. Like I watch that, I'm like, I feel that like right here. Like I know exactly what he's going through.
6 kids.
Oh yeah.
That's why you can only take a few at this.
We don't take all 6.
You don't take all 6 to the store, right?
No, we don't take all 6 to a lot of places. We usually take 1 or 2 at a time at the most.
So I don't know if you guys have ever been the Grand Californian Hotel on the Disneyland property
Mhm.
Have you been to the Napa Rose?
I have not been to the Napa Rose.
It's one of my favorites.
The Napa Rose, what they do is they have like 2 or 3 things that are always on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it changes weekly, because that's exactly how that chef works, is he goes to the markets, what's in season, what's fresh, what's inspiring me. And so the menu changes over every single week. And then what's really fun is if you call in advance, you can get reservations at the chef's table, and you get to sit.
I've never done that.
Oh, you've got to do it. You sit right up front, and they're making the food in front of you, and they're discussing. And one of the options that you can do is you can do chef's choice. And the chef will come over and ask you what you like, what you don't like. And then they'll create a menu for you specifically for you based on what they think that you'll enjoy.
I want to do that.
Oh my goodness. That is some of the best food I've ever had. And I think a lot of it is because it's different every single time you go.
Yeah.
See, I'm nervous to do something like that, because I'm nervous they'd be interviewing me about what I like and what I don't like, and be like, your palate is just not refined enough. Like, dude, just leave.
If they'll do it for me, they'll do it for you. I'm like, I don't like food. I don't like seafood. I'm not big into a ton of spice.
No, I love that. And so this movie, to me, I think it reminds us all that we can get stuck. That we can get stuck in a place where we're just comfortable, but we're not challenged. And I think that's whether it's your relationship, your job, your, that father-son or parent relationship, a friend relationship, like you can just get stuck. And sometimes we just need something to push us out of being comfortable, to remind us that we need to do that every once in a while. Because I think if you're too comfortable, then you're not actually being who you should be. You're not growing, and we should constantly be growing and changing. And, but I love it so much. And so, like with food, I think it's the same thing. A lot of us just get really comfortable with what we eat, and we don't try things. And so my thing was a couple of years ago is that I am going to try like all these different new things. And there's this restaurant here, and it's kind of my favorite Italian restaurant, but every time I go in, I ask, what is the chef's special of the night? And I don't even ask him what it is. I'm like, I'm going to have whatever his special is now. Like I've tried, like the first couple times I went there, I looked at the menu and I like tried what I thought I'd like. And then now, like when I go in, I don't even look at the menu, and I'm like, whatever the special is, I'll take it, like without even knowing what it is. And I know that can be scary sometimes in life to do that, but it's so much fun to discover that you might like something that you had no idea about.
Yeah. I grew up in a home that was very American comfort food based, and my mom was a good cook, but my mom's version of medium well was like charcoal. Like my mom cooked food till it was done. And so when we'd go out to like a restaurant and she'd order like a burger, would say to the waitress, would be like, okay, take what you think is well done, and then leave it on the grill for like 5 more minutes. And that would be okay.
And that just killed the chef, I'm sure.
I'm sure it did. So as an adult, I've had to explore more with my culinary tastes. And I love Indian food, and I love Thai food. And there's a lot of stuff that I never thought that I would have gotten into and enjoyed because I do that now. I like to go out and try. Yeah, there's something about getting something that you know and that you enjoy, and it's that comfort food.
Yeah.
But there's something really fun about going to a restaurant and trying something completely different and being blown away by it.
Yeah. And that's not always going to be a winner, but that's like life, like.
Right.
But but now you know what you don't like, which I think is super important, is as much as knowing what you like is, because I know you can ask a lot of people, like if I were to sit down at that chef table and he's like, what do you like? I'd be like, food.
Yeah.
I mean, it would, it's kind of daunting for you to say, what do you like? But I think a lot of us know what we don't like.
Right.
And I think that's super important. This movie, and of course there's a happy ending. They end up they end up with a new restaurant, and they end up getting married again, which is really great. And it's just this happily ever after, which I'm totally okay with. Like, I know there are some movies that I'm like, I don't love that there's a happily ever after for some movies, but this one, like, it's just great. I this movie is a AAA for me. I'm just throwing it out there. I know we're not there yet, but I watch this movie
we
probably
were going to be there in a second. So
yeah,
that's
I
fine.
watch this movie once a month when I'm having a hard time in my life, and especially during like the pandemic when we were home. I was struggling mentally because we can't go do anything, we can't see anything, a lot of changes going on. This movie is just so much fun. And I love introducing this movie to other people. When I introduced it to Dave and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen this movie before. I love this movie." And then, you tell other people about it and then they thank you, for telling them about this movie. This is one of those movies. Like, yes, there's some swears in it. Yes, there's a little bit of adult content, not a ton. But mainly it's about relationships and about knowing yourself and about, pushing yourself to be better, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, it does have the language is what gets it its R rating. I mean, really, outside of the language, there isn't really anything overly offensive in the film. But the language is what you would probably hear in a kitchen if you were working in a kitchen.
Yeah.
And
there's not a ton of it. It's not overbearing. I forget that it's there sometimes.
In the beginning, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, but then it kind of saunters off because the kid is there most of the time. So.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. Just because we're talking about it, but in the beginning, when he's really mired down and he's really in the rut, is when you hear a lot more of the language, and particularly the F word is in there quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then as he starts getting more and more into his passion, that kind of lightens up quite a bit. And so it's artistically, I think, purposely done that way.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
Yeah.
What about you, Tracy? What grade would you give this movie?
Well, this is a movie that had slipped under my radar. It's one that it's been on my list. It's one that I have meant to see, but I just never kind of got around to it. So Val, you suggesting it has introduced it to me.
Yay!
And I would give this an A. I think the dialogue in this film, the witty banter that they have and the rapid fire dialogue that goes back and forth between so many of the characters, that is so hard to do. To get people going back and forth without stepping on each other's lines. It's really well paced. It's one of those films where I don't feel like there's a lot that you could cut out. There's a ton of heart in it. It made me want to like eat all the foods, which is not good for me. But solid A for me. I really, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I think I'm in that A category as well. I think this is probably Jon Favreau's finest hour. I mean, really, as a writer, director, actor, I don't know that I've seen him as an actor better in anything else. He's not the lead in most of what he does, and he is the lead in this, and he carries the movie, and he does a great job. Like, I mean, he is just phenomenal in this film. The cast is super solid. And you get a great performance out of everybody who's in it, whether it's a small performance by, an Oliver Platt or Robert Downey Jr. or
Dennis Hoffman,
or a very different performance from like a Sofia Varga, who, we really only know from Modern Family. That's kind of her big role, and she's very different in this. It's very good, and it shows what he does the best, and that's getting these kind of performances from the actors that he works with and the stories that he tells. To me, Chef is Carl Casper in the beginning of his career when he's being creative and innovative and wonderful and great, and people are just letting him do what he wants, compared to like Lion King, which is him in that rut in the restaurant where he's kind of being controlled and told what he needs to do. Like, this is really him at his best. Jon Favreau is amazing in every way in this film.
Bring in the fire.
But tell me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. But I love
he also did. I just want to throw this out there. I wasn't a fan of the live action Lion King. I think we all know that because we all talked about it. But I really did like that he did the Jungle Book. And the Jungle Book to me was amazing. But I think you're right. Like, you're right on. People want to work with him because he brings out the best. He has great writing, great directing. When you see The Mandalorian and you see all of this great talent that he brought together, like, how who else could have done that? Maybe a handful of other people, but would they have brought out the best? He steps aside because even though he is the lead in this movie, it is the most relaxed lead you've ever seen in a movie, because you really, it's not like a Tom Cruise movie, and I'm not putting down Tom Cruise. He is a very specific actor, and when he's a lead in the movie, he is up here, and everyone else is kind of just behind him. But I think with this movie, with Jon Favreau, he is the lead, but it's this ensemble cast, all, I feel like, has their moments that stands out. He does not stand ahead of them. He stands with them. And I think that's very much what happens in a kitchen as well. Like, you cannot be a kitchen of one. You are a kitchen of everyone working in the symbiotic, you know, space. And if one person messes up, the whole thing can be, you know, just fall apart. And so there's so much that's great about this film. And I'm so glad you guys liked it, because it's so much fun. It's so great.
It is such an uplifting, fun movie. And watching that last night after a long week, it was exactly what I needed, and it's going to be in regular rotation for me.
Yay!
Yep. And it is available right now on Netflix, as well as the accompanying show where he is going and meeting with these chefs that have inspired him. So it's really cool. So check it out. Straight A's from us. So
that's rare.
First time? Is that the first time, or is that
I don't know if it's
rare?
It's rare.
We've done it a couple times, but it's rare that we give 3 A's across the board. Yeah.
So this is AAA rated for movies that make us. There you go.
It's like a 5-star Michelin chef restaurant.
Basically, the AAA rating from us and 5-star Michelin, like that's the same level of prestige.
Right.
So,
This
Jon
is like
Favreau, you're in rarefied air, so welcome.
This is the Ratatouille of live action film cooking
There
films.
you go.
Awesome. We are going to be back next week with another great film that has to do with this kind of rebirth, renewing idea. It's going to be a lot of fun to do that this month throughout April. And we're just excited about it. So thank you for listening. Go make sure you check out all of our social media, because we have updated our logo and we want to show it off. We have a flamingo on there now officially.
Yes.
So super exciting stuff. But yeah, we appreciate all of your feedback. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we won't see you at the movies.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been a Stolen Droids Media production.